Hey everyone, so Doug here from Putt'n Around Reefing. This is going to be our first video that we are posting on the new channel. We are going to copy some of our older videos from our last channel and carry them over to the new channel. So you'll see a bunch of uploads right around this time, but if you're picking up from where we left off with the old channel, this is it. So yeah, last time we did an update, I was working on or trying to plan out how I wanted to modify my sump because it didn't have enough headspace in it to hold all the flow over or the flow down when you turn off the return pump. And I had actually bought another tank and was considering like throwing it under there for the time being while I modified the existing sump. Well, none of that happened. I was at a frag swap about a month ago, and I was talking to one of the other reefers I've known for quite some time, and he's like, man, you just got to turn your flow down. And I'm like, I know, but like, I've got this, 2,700 gallon per hour pump, and I like running it at 100% because why would I pay all that money for a pump that can do that if I'm not going to use it? And he just basically said, hey, if you got to throw in another pump, power head to keep up with the flow, then that's what you got to do. But so I went home and I was like, all right, I'm going to tweak the flow a little bit. I'm going to turn down the return pump. I'm going to slow down how much water goes into the big tank and kind of direct more of it into the side tank over here. And that's what I did. And I mean, the water drew down so much in the two tanks when I did that like the sump was like full. So I just left it there, let it evaporate off, and then I shut down the pump and let it sit for like 20 minutes. And sure enough, I still had like 1.5 inches of headspace in the sump, and it was as simple as that. Buying that extra tank and coming up with all these complicated plans was not the route I needed to go. And in reality, I didn't lose that much flow in here. I'm still only running the one WAV pump from Neptune, and I've got my Varios 8 pump running on the third setting. So it's got like 5 power settings. It's running right in the middle, and it literally reduced my water volume by about 10 gallons. By just running slower flow. Basically what it was is less water is being pumped up and being waiting to drain down into the overflow. So there's less drawdown when you turn off the pumps. It was that simple. I knew that could be an option the whole time. I was just stubborn and reluctant to do it. And I just needed someone to give me that little push and say, hey, it's what you have at your fingertips right now. Give it a shot. And at this point, I don't think I'm going back to running that pump at 100%, which is fine. Maybe I get a little extra life out of that pump now. I wasn't really ever concerned about the pump burning out because I have a backup pump on hand already, just waiting for the day that my return pump does die. And yeah, basically I got more flow in the cube, and overall less flow for the system, and still running good on flow. So glad I had that conversation. The other thing was when I was talking last time about how I wanted to get cabinet doors done for this system. Well, as you can see, no cabinet doors in sight. Yeah, I haven't had the time to go over to my buddy's house, who's a finished carpenter, and use some of his equipment to get the trim work for the cabinet doors done. I have my own router table. I have a lot of my own woodworking tools. That's how I got a lot of this stuff done. But I just feel like doing a cabinet door, especially one here that's like almost 6 feet long, I need to be using some equipment that's a little bit higher quality than what I have in the garage. So he also just moved, so that makes it difficult. I'm trying to give him his space and his time while he sorts that out. Gets unpacked and settled in. Moving his family into a new home. So So in the meantime, I was still somewhat productive. So we're gonna go into the fish room here. Sorry about the close-up shots. You guys know how tight this fish room is. But I got shelves in, and very happy with it. My organization of this fish room has skyrocketed. It's through the roof right now. It's led to a lot of extra space in the fish room. So I've got everything from like my test kits in that bin, my quarantine stuff, there's my backup pump in the back there, just general equipment way up top there that I don't use very much. All of my dosing stuff on one shelf here, got my graduated cylinders, my refractometer, all the supplements I use for the tank, and then fish feeding stuff. So all my coral foods and fish foods, and looks like we got some filter socks down there at the end. General maintenance stuff, just turkey baster for feeding, scrapers, coral feeders, fish net, and then my fragging stuff down at the bottom. Now, I don't do much fragging right now with this system because it's so new and there's just nothing really to frag. But I've had systems in the past that were very mature, and I would have to trim corals, and of course I'd frag it and use that to fund my other fish tank projects. So all my fragging stuff is sitting here in queue, waiting for the day that this tank needs some trimming. You'll notice I've got another project coming up. You notice that if I swing around the wall here, that the shelves don't go all the way to the wall. They stop right when that water barrel stops, and that's where we keep our RO water. Well, I'm going to build a stand that allows us to basically stack two of these barrels, these 30-gallon barrels, on top of each other. And I think I have a third one that's food grade laying around. I'll have to check. My biggest concern is I know I have some of these barrels that aren't food grade that I've used for more like farming stuff that I do on the property. And I don't want to get them mixed up. So I might just go out and try to find another food grade one of these. Rather than take a risk and think that I'm using a food grade one, but really I'm using something that's held like fertilizer in it in the past, which would be terrible for my fish tank. So, but for now I got these two barrels. What I want to do is I want to put a third barrel in here right above that one in the back. That way I can keep this one for RO water. And then when I want to do a water change, I can pump the water up to the second one and mix it in that one. The third one here is always used for water change water. So when I drain water from the tank, I use this barrel to make sure I'm pulling the right volume out before I pump in the new water. And then when I pump in the new water, that way if I need a little bit of extra water, I can just put a little bit of that dirty water back into the tank to make sure the water level stays the same. I know there's other ways to do it where you only need 2 barrels, and I'll certainly look into it, but I honestly feel like this is the way that suits my system better. So it's kind of the way I've always done it in the past. I've never thrown away my wastewater until the water change was complete, and having that third barrel on hand is what allows me to do that. So, yeah, that's what we might work on in the future. That one might have to wait a little bit longer than projects normally do around here, just because we don't do a lot of water changes. We've only done like 2 or 3 water changes ever on this tank. It's been running for... We're going to hit the 1-year mark really soon here, and I'll definitely post a video when that happens. But yeah, we've been running for almost a year, and we just don't feel the need to do a lot of water changes. Yeah, I know people have mixed views on that. I mean, we do run a skimmer that is very much so rated for a bigger system. It's rated for up to 500 gallons. And this system altogether, there's no way it's over like 350 gallons of water volume. Especially not after how I've modified the flow in the system and decreased it by 10 gallons. So, yeah, we're running an overrated skimmer. There is a lot of macroalgae in the system. So again, we have about I'd say 25-gallon refugium underneath the system in the sump, and we have this 60 cube which runs a lot of macroalgae in it. Our nutrients stay low, and I'm going to talk about that later in the video, coming up real soon. But that's just the way we operate with this system, and it's been treating us well. So yeah, I don't know. I want to get that done, but it's not at the front of the list. I think the cabinet doors are now at the front of the list for sure. But really liking the shelves. We already had all the brackets and that railing that the brackets hang off of. We already had all the top two shelves are melamine. We already had that. I just had to cut them down to size. And I already had all these boards laying around in the barn, so I just had to cut them down to size and paint them white. So it was free. I didn't spend a dime doing it, just an afternoon. And I really appreciate it. So here, I'm going to try to dip around the corner here and show you how clean my fish room is now. So I got some tubing underneath the cube. That used to be a whole pile of junk. And then beyond where the sump is, in the back here, this used to all be a pile of junk. And now I've got just like 2 buckets and some old fish netting. And, you know, the sump is as usual. Not a whole bunch of clutter here in front of the sump. Nice and free. So I'm liking it. It's, sorry, I gotta turn around here. Bad video making. But yeah, I'm liking the extra space in there. It's way easier to move around, get stuff done. The shelves were a lifesaver. They've also kind of doubled as a workbench in the past week. I've been mixing up my food right there at the shelves. I think a couple times I did some maintenance stuff. I just did it right there. So it's kind of cool. I like it. Alright, so moving on from the shelves, what else we got here? We are... well, I'll talk about the nutrients. So we've been having some issues with the nutrients in this system. But this time, it's a whole different story. So if you remember from my first video, it was right after the aftermath of a huge refugium issue. The light for our refugium fell over. Nobody was around for like a week. And by the time somebody got back to it and saw that the light was just sitting there on the floor, pointing down at the tile, all the Kato in our refugium had died. Or was dying. It was like white, and we obviously had to pull it and throw it away. And our nutrients in this tank went way up. And it was really poor timing because it was not too long after the tank cycled. Maybe about 4 months after the tank was really done with its cycle. And everyone knows that's the ugly stage of the tank. That is where you're already going to get nuisance algae popping up in the tank. And diatoms growing on your sand bed. And that's probably where you're going to have your biggest battle with cyanobacteria, if you ever do. So we had all of the above. We had a lot of green hair algae. We had a lot of diatoms on the sand bed. And we even had a little bit of cyanobacteria after that. And it was all because of high nutrients. Well, now we're really battling with low nitrates. It's been that way for over a month now. Every time we test, it's pretty much always 0, with the exception of a few tests where we came back at like 0.25 parts per million. We track all of our recordings very carefully, both hard copy in a notebook and on Apex Fusion. That low nitrate has led to like a stall in our phosphate uptake. All of our macroalgae kind of ceased growing. I mean, it still existed, it still did fine, but we ended up with phosphates a little bit higher than normal, and they were sitting there just perched at this high level for quite some time, and that was because nitrate was the limiting nutrient to a lot of our macroalgae. So in order to fix this, we started dosing nitrogen about a week ago. And we started off really, really slow because I was very unsure of this. When I first watched the BRS TV video that talked about dosing nitrogen, I gotta say, I shook my head and I rolled my eyes and thought, wow, we are really getting too carried away with this. Been in the hobby forever, never thought about dosing nitrate or nitrogen. Like, it just didn't seem like a realistic need for a system. And yet, sure enough, here I am, maybe a year or so later, and I'm in that situation. So I started dosing really slow, and I saw no change, and I'm starting to ramp up how much nitrogen I'm dosing slowly, but I did dose 20 milliliters this morning. I think it wants me to dose a lot more, given the directions on the label. But again, I want to see how slowly I can ramp this up. I definitely know that one thing you do not want to do is overdose nitrogen to your tank. Your nitrates will be too high, and then we'll be back in the same boat that we were when we started shooting these videos. So, dosing nitrogen, we haven't really seen an increase yet. I tested nitrate today, and it was one of those tests that came back at 0.25 parts per million. So, I can't really say it's an increase because we've seen that number before in recent tests, but for the most part, we have been seeing 0. So yeah, dose of nitrogen. We'll see how that goes. Probably the next video we'll have a more conclusive decision on whether dosing nitrogen was what we needed to get those phosphates down. Let's see here. So the other thing that I wanted to discuss in this episode was you might notice something's missing from this tank. The chromuses are nowhere to be seen. Right? Look left, look right. That was the reverse. They're still here, but for some reason they are hiding like crazy. So you might be able to see that guy poking out right behind the black spine urchin over there. I don't know. I fed the tank the other day, and I counted 8 at the same time. Now originally we had 12. And I'm sure there still are 12, but they've become very shy, and I don't know why. We haven't added any new fish, and really the only thing that we've changed in the past couple 2-3 weeks was we started feeding every day almost every day. Some days we're just too busy, and we did that basically because of the low nitrate situation that I just talked about, but also because, I definitely don't mind feeding the fish once a day because I like seeing them come out and eat. But yeah, so maybe they're just like, since there's been this like huge input of food to the system, that they just don't need to be out and about scavenging. Now chromuses, they definitely like feeding on pelagic food sources, so things that are floating around in the water column. And so if they have no need to feed, they're probably not out swimming about trying to find food. So that's my only thought. I don't know if I'm overthinking it or what, but had we like just added a new fish and this happened, I'd be like, oh, there's probably some bullying going on or whatever. But nope, we haven't added a fish in quite a while. Our last fish we added, I think, was the Melanaris wrasse down here, and he's been in here. I think we got him the day we first started shooting the videos, so it was like over 2 months ago. And the chromuses were definitely out for almost that entire time that we've had them. So we've added some coral frags to the tank, which we'll probably do another video on later when we get some more coral. We'll start discussing what we have. But of course, adding coral is not going to affect fish behavior. So I don't know. They're in here. You see them pop their heads out of the rockwork all the time. They're like phenomenal at hiding in these tiny little nooks and crannies. But yeah, it's kind of a disappointment. They were like one of my favorite things in the tank. I like seeing that big school of little blue fish. Schooling fish is something I've always wanted, and that was like a huge desire of mine when we put this build together. So we'll have to revisit that and see if that changes. Maybe if I can get these nitrates up and get these phosphates down a little bit, maybe I can cut back on the feeding and see if the behavior reverses itself. Not sure, but we'll see. Some other things is I just said that we haven't added fish in a long time. Well, that is also kind of on the top of our priority list now. we really want to get around to adding some new fish. We've got the room for it. Nothing too big. We're going to look into adding a couple bubble tip anemones, probably two. I'll probably get one red and one green or something like that. And we're going to get 2 pairs of clownfish. We're going to get like 1 pair of traditional ocellaris and 1 pair of the black ocellaris, and hope that we could get them to each pair to host their own anemone. In the past, I've done my research on how the best ways to get them to actually host the anemone, and of course it starts with adding the anemone weeks ahead of time so that the anemone is well established in your tank before you get the clownfish. So that's what we're going to do, is probably get the bubble tip anemones soon, and then in a few weeks, if the anemones are doing well, we'll look into getting a couple pairs of clowns. Then we're going to add a small group of Anthias. And I know that can get a little tricky because they have such a strict social hierarchy. But I think we're going to do our due diligence to find a group that has a male and maybe 2 or 3 females that are all of equal size. And being that this is a tank that's already has quite a decent community in it, that we should be all right. I think the kind of territorialism from some of the other fish in here will stop them from picking within their own group. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've never had more than 1 Anthias in a tank before, but we're going to give it a shot. The other thing is a copper band butterfly. Our fish store has been getting them in pretty regularly, and I don't know, it's something I've always wanted but never had. Prior to this, my biggest tank ever was 90 gallon, and that was pretty well stocked by the time I got interested in a copper band butterfly. So we're probably gonna add one to this tank. We'll see how it goes. I've always been on the fence about them because I'm worried they're gonna pick at the corals, but we don't have any like feather dusters or anything because like my wrasses will kill them. So, and I know that that's primarily what they tend to pick on in reef tanks. But let me know if you've ever had a copper band like pick at actual coral or something. Yeah, and so I think that's just about all we're gonna add. I always really like chorus wrasses, so probably won't get a chorus wrasse, but I would really like to get a leopard wrasse in here. I've never had a leopard wrasse before, but I think they're pretty cool, and I'm pretty picky about my wrasses, so it'll probably be one of those like African blue star wrasses, if anything. We have 3 wrasses in the tank right now. We have the yellow chorus wrasse right there. We have that red fairy wrasse, and somewhere over here is my Melanaris. There he is. So I've always been a big fan of these fish. I like them, so wouldn't mind having one more. But yeah, other than that, that's our focus coming up is add more fish and get the cabinet doors on. So yeah, I hope you're liking the new channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you want to check out the new videos. Again, this is the first video that we're really posting on the new channel, so if you're subscribed to our other channel, we're not going to be posting updates there anymore. So make sure you check out this one. Hit the subscribe button. Again, I'm like kind of really happy about how many views people are putting on these videos and how many hours have been watched. I just never thought people would be that interested in what I had to say about my tank. But yeah, glad it's happening. Gives me a little extra something to do, shoot some videos for y'all. So I'm liking it, and yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's it for this update. Let me know if you have any questions or ideas for upcoming videos, things you'd want me to show you about this miniature fish room, or maybe we should just start calling it the fish closet because it's about the size of a walk-in closet. There's probably a lot of closets that are even bigger than this. But yeah, let me know if you got any questions about how I put things together for this build. I'm more than willing to shoot a video where I answer some of the questions, or if you just you know, want me to discuss something about the tank, you know, willing to do that too. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the channel in the future. Like I said, I got lots of ideas on videos, and it's just gonna be a matter of time for me to sort them out and really get on some of these projects. So, you know, all right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up here, you guys. Hopefully, all the upcoming videos aren't so long. I know a couple of these have been pretty long-winded, so I'm just gonna leave you with thanks for watching, everybody.